July 2nd, 1937. Amelia Earhart, the world's most famous female aviator, takes off from Lae, New Guinea, attempting to circumnavigate the globe. Her next destination, tiny Howland Island, a speck in the vast Pacific Ocean 2,500 miles away. She never arrives. The U.S. Navy launches the largest search and rescue operation in history up to that time. 3,000 men, 10 ships, 102 aircraft scouring 250,000 square miles of ocean. They find nothing. Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, vanished without a trace. For 87 years, the mystery has haunted America. Where did she go? Did she crash into the ocean? Did she land on a remote island and die as a castaway? Or, and this is where the story intersects with World War II, was she captured by the Japanese military just 4 years before Pearl Harbor? In 2017, the History Channel aired a documentary claiming to have found photographic evidence that Earhart and Noonan were taken prisoner in the Marshall Islands and transported to Saipan, where they died in Japanese custody. The documentary suggested the U.S. government knew this all along and orchestrated a massive cover-up. Within days, the theory was thoroughly debunked. But the questions persist. Why did the theory gain such traction? What is the evidence connecting Earhart to Japanese-held territory? And when U.S. Marines invaded Saipan in 1944, what did they really find? Today, we're exploring one of history's most enduring mysteries and asking, did Amelia Earhart's disappearance foreshadow World War II? To understand why this mystery matters, you need to understand who Amelia Earhart was. Born in 1897 in Kansas, Amelia Mary Earhart became an international celebrity in 1928 when she became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic Ocean as a passenger. 4 years later, in 1932, she did it again, this time solo, becoming the first woman to fly the Atlantic alone. She set record after record, altitude records, speed records, transcontinental flights. She wrote best-selling books. She appeared on radio shows and in newsreels. She designed her own line of women's clothing and luggage. She was a feminist icon who proved women could do anything men could do. In 1937, at age 39, Earhart decided to attempt something no one had accomplished, flying around the world at its widest point along the equator. The journey would cover 29,000 miles across 4 continents. She flew a Lockheed Electra 10E, a twin-engine all-metal monoplane capable of long-distance flight. Her navigator was Fred Noonan, an experienced aviator and one of the best navigators in the world, who had charted routes for Pan American Airways Pacific Service. On June 1st, 1937, Earhart and Noonan departed from Miami. For a month, the flight went perfectly. They crossed South America, Africa, India, and Southeast Asia, making headlines everywhere they landed. By early July, they had completed about 22,000 miles of the journey. Only 7,000 miles remained. On July 2nd, they took off from Lae, New Guinea, for what should have been a routine 18-hour flight to Howland Island. It was the longest and most difficult leg of the journey, 2,500 miles across open ocean to an island so small and remote that finding it would require perfect navigation. They never made it. At Howland Island, the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Itasca waited to guide Earhart in for landing. The ship had radio equipment and could communicate with her aircraft. The radio contact became increasingly problematic throughout the flight. Earhart's transmissions were fragmentary and confusing. She reported being unable to find the island. She transmitted on frequencies that the Itasca couldn't use for direction finding. Communication broke down completely. Her last transmission came at 8:43 a.m. local time. "We are on the line 157-337, running on line north and south." These coordinates described a line running through Howland Island, suggesting she was flying along this line, searching for the island. Then silence. The massive search began immediately, but found nothing. On January 5th, 1939, Earhart was officially declared dead. The official conclusion, Earhart and Noonan ran out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific Ocean. The crash and sink theory remains the most widely accepted explanation today, but almost immediately alternative theories emerged, and the most persistent controversial theory claims she was captured by the Japanese, making her disappearance not just an aviation tragedy, but a prologue to World War II. The theory goes like this: Earhart and Noonan, unable to find Howland Island and running low on fuel, diverted to the Marshall Islands about 800 miles northwest of Howland. The Marshall Islands were under Japanese control, part of the South Seas Mandate that Japan had governed since World War I. According to the theory, Earhart crash-landed or made an emergency landing at Mili Atoll. In the Marshalls, local islanders witnessed the landing and saw Japanese military personnel take the two Americans into custody. Suspected by the Japanese of being American spies, Earhart and Noonan were transported to Jaluit Atoll, then to the island of Saipan, over 1,400 miles north, where Japan maintained a major military base. On Saipan, the theory claims they were imprisoned, interrogated, and eventually died, either from dysentery and disease or by execution. Why would the Japanese consider them spies? In 1937, Japan was secretly fortifying islands across the Pacific in a violation of the Washington Naval Treaty. The Japanese had banned all foreigners from visiting these islands, creating intense American suspicion about what they were hiding. Some versions of the theory claim Earhart's around-the-world flight was actually a cover for a U.S. government reconnaissance mission to photograph Japanese fortifications. After World War II began, this theory spread widely among American troops. When U.S. Marines invaded Saipan in June 1944, rumors circulated that they had found evidence of Earhart's captivity, her briefcase, flight documents, even her aircraft. The theory gained significant momentum in the 1960s and has persisted ever since, despite having been repeatedly debunked. What evidence exists for the Japanese capture theory? The Saipan witnesses. In 1960, CBS correspondent Fred Gerner interviewed numerous Saipanese people who claimed to have witnessed a white woman and man in Japanese custody in 1937. The most famous was Josephine Akiyama, who said that at age 11, she saw two white people, one of them a short-haired woman in pants, under guard at a Japanese seaplane base on Saipan. So Akiyama's account seemed credible. She had no reason to lie and gained nothing from her testimony. But there were problems. She had never heard of Amelia Earhart until 1947, couldn't confirm the captives were Earhart and Noonan, and had no idea what happened to them after she saw them. Other witnesses emerged with conflicting stories. Some claimed Earhart died from dysentery. Others said she was beheaded or executed. Some said they found her briefcase or diary, but these items mysteriously disappeared before they could be verified. The 2017 photograph, The Most Sensational Evidence, came in 2017 when the History Channel's documentary, Amelia Earhart, The Lost Evidence, revealed a photograph supposedly showing Earhart and Noonan on a dock at Jaluit Atoll in the Marshall Islands. The photograph, found in the National Archives, showed several people on a wharf with a Japanese ship in the background. A forensic analyst claimed with very likely certainty that two of the people were Earhart and Noonan. The documentary suggested this proved Earhart had been captured and transported to Saipan aboard the Japanese ship Koshu Maru. Within days, the theory collapsed. Japanese blogger Kota Yamano discovered the original source of the photograph in the National Diet Library Digital Collection, a Japanese travel guide published in October 1935, nearly 2 years before Earhart disappeared. The photograph couldn't possibly show Earhart. The History Channel immediately pulled the documentary, stopped all rebroadcasts, and issued a statement apologizing for the error. U.S. military findings on Saipan. After U.S. forces captured Saipan in 1944, some soldiers reported finding items they believed belonged to Earhart. A sergeant claimed to have found a grave near a Japanese prison that he suspected might contain Earhart's remains. In 2004, an archaeological excavation was conducted at the suspected gravesite. They found no trace of Earhart or Noonan. The grave contained remains of local Saipanese people. Despite its emotional appeal, the Japanese capture theory has serious fundamental problems: geography and fuel. The Marshall Islands are 800 miles northwest of Howland Island. For Earhart to have reached them, she would have needed to fly 800 miles in the opposite direction from where she was heading, while already low on fuel after a 2,500-mile flight. This makes no navigational sense. If Earhart missed Howland and continued on her stated heading, 1,337 line, she would have flown south toward the Phoenix Islands, not northwest toward the Marshalls. To reach the Marshalls, Earhart would have had to reverse course completely, an action no experienced pilot would take while desperately low on fuel. The timeline doesn't work. Research by Japanese author Fukiko Aoki definitively proved that the Japanese ship Koshumaru, allegedly used to transport Earhart, was 1,500 miles away from the Marshall Islands on July the 2nd through 3rd, 1937. Ship logs showed the Koshimaru was at Greenwich Island, now Kapingamarangi, on July 3rd, the day after Earhart disappeared, transporting meteorologists. The vessel was nowhere near the marshals at the crucial time. The Japanese had no motive. On July 7, 1937, just 5 days after Earhart disappeared, Japan and China went to war following the Marco Polo Bridge incident. The last thing Japan needed was an international incident involving the world's most famous American woman. If Japanese forces had captured Earhart, they had every reason to rescue and return her, generating positive international publicity. Imprisoning or executing her would have risked war with the United States at a time when Japan was already fighting China. The aircraft had no intelligence value. The Lockheed Electra was a commercial aircraft widely used by airlines worldwide. It held no technological secrets. By 1937, Japan was producing the Mitsubishi G3M bomber, far superior to the Electra in every way. There was zero intelligence value in capturing Earhart's aircraft, no physical evidence. Despite decades of searching, no credible physical evidence has ever been found linking Earhart to Japanese custody. No aircraft parts, no personal belongings, no documents, no remains that can be conclusively identified as hers. Every claimed piece of evidence, briefcases, rings, diaries, has either been proven false or mysteriously disappeared before verification. While the Japanese capture theory is almost certainly false, there is a genuine connection between Earhart's disappearance and World War II, just not the one conspiracy theorists imagine. The strategic islands, the Japanese-controlled Marshall, Caroline, and Mariana Islands, where Earhart allegedly crashed, would indeed become crucial battlegrounds in World War II. Saipan, Tarawa, Peleliu, and others saw some of the Pacific War's bloodiest fighting. In 1937, these islands were off-limits to Americans and other foreigners. Japan was secretly fortifying them in violation of international treaties. U.S. military planners desperately wanted intelligence about these fortifications. This created an atmosphere of suspicion that helped fuel Earhart conspiracy theories. When she disappeared near Japanese-held territory, people naturally wondered, was she spying? Wartime rumors. When U.S. Marines invaded Saipan in 1944, rumors spread among the troops that evidence of Earhart had been found. These rumors weren't based on reality, they were based on pre-war speculation that had taken on the status of folk legend among servicemen. The findings on Saipan were wishful thinking, not evidence. The cover-up that wasn't, conspiracy theorists claim the U.S. government covered up Earhart's capture to avoid admitting she was on a spy mission or to prevent war with Japan. But this makes no sense. If Earhart had been on a government spy mission and was captured, the logical response would be to deny she was a spy and demand her return as a civilian pilot. Instead, the government spent millions on a genuine search operation. There's no evidence of any cover-up because there was nothing to cover up. The most likely explanation remains the original one. Earhart and Noonan ran out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Radio transmission suggests they were near Howland Island but couldn't locate it. Navigation errors, faulty communication equipment, and the extreme difficulty of finding a tiny island in a vast ocean all contributed to the tragedy. An alternative theory, proposed by the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, TIJAR, suggests Earhart flew south along the 157-337 line, missed Howland Island, and crash-landed on Nikumaroro, then called Gardner Island, about 350 miles southeast of Howland. TIJAR has conducted numerous expeditions to Nikumaroro and found artifacts they believe could be linked to Earhart: aircraft aluminum, a jar of freckle cream, a woman's shoe, and other items. In 2024, sonar detected what might be aircraft wreckage, though this hasn't been confirmed. Whether she crashed at sea or on Nikumaroro, the evidence overwhelmingly suggests Earhart died in 1937, far from Japanese territory, a victim of navigational error and the limitations of 1930s aviation technology. So why does the Japanese capture theory persist, despite being thoroughly debunked? Because we want our heroes to have dramatic fates. We want Earhart's story to be bigger than a simple navigation error. We want her disappearance to mean something, to connect to World War II, to government conspiracies, to secret missions. The truth is more tragic and more human. A brilliant, courageous woman attempted something extraordinary and died trying. That's the real story. Not spies, not cover-ups, just courage, ambition, and the risks that come with pushing boundaries. There is a connection between Amelia Earhart and World War II. but it's not about Japanese capture. It's about timing. She disappeared in 1937, just as Japan was expanding militarily across the Pacific. Her disappearance near Japanese-held islands contributed to American suspicion about Japanese activities in the region. When war came 4 years later, those suspicions proved justified. Japan had been secretly fortifying the islands. They were preparing for war. But Earhart had nothing to do with it. 87 years later, Amelia Earhart remains missing. Her Lockheed Electra lies somewhere in the Pacific, on the ocean floor, or on a remote island, waiting to be found. Until then, she remains what she always was, aviation's greatest mystery, and a reminder that even our most celebrated heroes are vulnerable to the unforgiving forces of nature. Thank you for watching. If you found this exploration fascinating, please subscribe for more World War II content. And let me know in the comments, do you think Earhart will ever be found? What's your theory? Until next time, remember, sometimes the simplest explanation is the correct one, even when we wish it weren't.